I'm Tom Layson, and this is a Northwest Now Digital Extra. Do you sometimes feel like everybody else seems to think they can do your job better than you can, despite the fact they've never spent a single second actually training for or doing your job? Well, take that feeling and multiply it by about 10, and you might get a sense of what it's like to be a teacher these days. Reformers, experts, gurus, they all come and go. But it's the teachers who are stuck day in, day out, trying to compensate for massive social problems, and who are expected to somehow move the needle when it comes to thorny problems like graduation rates and the achievement gap. So it's no real surprise the young aren't flocking into jobs where salaries start in the 30s or 40s, and a troubled child's test scores determine your fate. A survey last winter shows 44% of the principals in the state couldn't fill positions with fully credentialed teachers. 80% hired people with emergency teaching or substitute certificates. 74% of the principals cover classes themselves at least once a week. In 2010, there were about 1,000 emergency substitute certificates issued by the OSPI statewide. Last year, almost 3,900. You can pretty much pick districts and schools struggling to hire out of a hat, but we went to Liberty Middle School in the Bethel district. Bethel's actually been pretty darn successful, hiring a whopping 450 teachers in the past 3 years alone, trying to catch up with both retirements and a rapidly growing enrollment.
I think what you're seeing is pretty typical in most school districts, and we have gone the emergency certification route. There's like 4 different things you can do, and have people also teach out of their accredited area. And we've done all that this year. That plus the emergency certification for even substitutes. We've hired some of our substitute teachers, so suddenly there are enough substitute teachers, and so we've gone through a process of even hiring emergency substitute teachers and providing them training so that they're capable of walking into a classroom and being able to function.
As veteran math teacher Kathy Peterson prepares her room for the upcoming school year, she worries about the state of the profession, of course, but more immediately, the day-to-day operations of any school that's short-staffed.
And if you have a teacher shortage, that means you're probably not bringing in the best and the brightest, and they're out there, definitely. And so you have to figure out how can we get them to want to come into this profession again, which is probably one of the most important jobs there are. Our kids, our future. So it affects us because we're worried we're not getting the best and the brightest, but on a daily, day-to-day basis, it affects us because we might not have substitutes. School might be starting in a week and there are still positions that haven't been filled. What are we going to do? Who are we going to get? You know, a good school is a team, and we work together as that team, and if there's a piece missing, you're not helping anybody.
The recession delayed teacher retirements, and low starting salaries, the curriculum wars, and teaching to test has kept new candidates out. In a lot of ways, a perfect recipe for creating a shortage. Especially in Washington, where it's up to local taxpayers to compete against each other to supplement salaries through levies.
I think the pressure and the stress that's put on teachers, you're just out of school, it's your first job perhaps, test scores, large class sizes, you're expected to do this, you're expected to do that. There's so many different ways that you're pulled, curriculum, evaluations, and then you look at the people who go into teaching and don't stay. That's what I think bothers me the most, is you've made the commitment to be a teacher, but something happened that changed that.
I know the state constitution says amply fund public education is the paramount duty of the state. I'd be happy if it was just adequate. And that's the problem. There has been basically a cheating by the legislature so long that the only way to really try to fix this thing is to take local money, which the state constitution says you're not supposed to do, and pay for the additional services that are actually required. And it's not only for just teacher salary, but in our case, transportation, and special education. Every year we spend between at least $3 to $4 million in local levy just to cover special education kids, which are actually part of basic education and should be fully funded by the state.
Peterson has taught in several states and says that the large class sizes here in Washington shocked her for a while. But her mentor said something to her once that she clings to now in these challenging times.
You have to remember that teaching is like a pendulum, and it'll swing all the way this way. And so it has, I believe it has swung the furthest it's going to get as far as testing. And we're testing. And follow this and do this and do that, and then it'll swing back a little. And what he said to me is, it always falls somewhere in the middle. So I'm hoping that we're going to come back to that middle point, because at the end of the day, it's a great profession and it has such meaning. So I want to be a glass half full person.
And finally this. Superintendent Siegel calls the dominant narrative of the last decade that the public schools are failing the big lie, and that if the state fixes a few things, hiring will get easier. But until then,
our HR department, our human resources department, is very, very flexible and creative. They go to all the job fairs, we're on all the websites, we're on social media, and word of mouth. We're even doing partnerships with like Pacific Lutheran University, where some of our paraprofessionals have gone to get certification, and we're stretching in every way. So if you, by the way, if you know somebody who wants to come teach, even on a substitute basis, come on down, we'll hire you.
to see our full discussion about the teacher shortage, be sure to look in the Northwest Now digital section of kbtc.org. Northwest Now airs Friday nights at 7:30 right here on KBTC, and be sure to look for more digital stories like this one by following us on Facebook and Twitter at Northwest Now.